Hi, I'm Brady Zenz.
And I'm Ben Sohn, and this is the 12-6 podcast.
Today we're here with Victor Rojas, the current president and GM of the Frisco Roughriders. He's also a former announcer for the Angels and Rangers. He also played baseball at a very high level. So we're glad to have you on. And so we'll get to asking you some questions.
It's good to be here, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. It's a pleasure. So you have many calls that you've had during your announcing career. What was your favorite call that you ever did?
Man, it's a great question because, I've always been a big believer in the moment, letting the moment play out. And so I've been fortunate enough to be a part of a lot of really special calls, whether it was uh, Sammy's Sosa's 600th home run, and then you fast forward to Albert and all of the things that he did: 3,000th hit, 2,000th RBI, his 500th and 600th home runs. There's so many great things, plus games, right? Because of the no hitters, Irvin Santana, Jared Weavers, and then of course the combined no hitter on the Tyler Skaggs night after Tyler passed away. So it's hard to say what's my all time favorite. I think, gosh, I mean, I would probably say the one where Trout's climbing the wall in center field, and I just absolutely just screamed out, "Are you serious?" Just because it caught me off guard. I thought off the bat that ball. I mean, you can hear it in the tone of my voice when I'm talking about or describing the home run or what I thought was going to be a home run. I thought for sure it was gone, and then to see him climb the wall and be up there like Spider-Man, I thought that was pretty sick, and it was one of those that I just loved it. That's probably one of my favorite calls of all time.
Yeah, I
That
remember
call,
watching that game live. That was just unbelievable. That was insane.
Yeah.
so how do you feel when your voice is all over the stadium before the game? Isn't that a big factor to you? What do you think?
It's weird. It's like most people in this business, we don't really like the sound of our own voice. It's kind of weird. Maybe it's because, coming up in the business, or when you spend time in the business, you start critiquing yourself, and you're typically your own worst critic. And so, whether it's, the deep breath that you can hear in the audio, or just little idiosyncrasies, it's kind of a little cringy. So what you hear before the game is usually just highlights, which is good because they're chopping them up and it's not the whole thing. It's cool. I thought early on it was really cool to hear. I remember when I first got hired in 2010 that, obviously having not called an Angels game, all the highlights were from previous years, right? From leading up, from the beginning of 61 to now, or until 2010, a lot of the playoff runs and all that stuff, the World Series, and Rory and Fizz and those guys on there. And it's like, it'd be kind of cool to, make my own statement at some point, whenever that happens, and be able to be in that loop during the pregame. And so by the time I finished 11 years later, I had some pretty memorable moments on there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
for sure.
sure. So I know a lot goes into like getting all these jobs and stuff, but how did you become a GM and president of the Frisco Roughriders?
Well, I mean, it was really a pure luck thing. It was after I interviewed for the Angels GM job in 2020 after the season. Perry got the gig, and I was kind of in my mindset, all right, going to spring training in February of 21 and just doing my normal thing. I was under contract and everything. And then I had someone reach out to me saying that there was a possibility of them looking for someone to run the ball club here in Texas. And at that time, because coming off of COVID, remember there was no minor league season whatsoever. The minor leagues were excuse me, the minor leagues were being shrunken down from 160 teams to 120 teams, and nobody knew if there was going to be a season in 2021. So, they told me this early on, and they said, "Well, there's a possibility we could have a season, and we think we'd like for you to be the person running it." And so I had to make a tough decision to leave the booth. But with the health issues that my wife had been dealing with a couple of years prior to, the ability to be home and spend time there, watch my daughter graduate, watch my son finish his junior year, and then go into his senior year, I just thought it was too good of an opportunity to really not take at that point. It was difficult for sure because I'd grown to love Southern California. I've been, gosh, I've been an Angel fan since 1982. That's when my dad first started working for the Angels, and I was still in high school at the time. So it's been a long time since I've loved that franchise, right? And I grew up in that ballpark. My dad managed there in '88, and I bat boyed there, and so it's kind of it was really hard. It pulls at my heartstrings, but ultimately, family won out, and I'm thankful that I made that decision, that the opportunity was there, because my wife eventually ended up having to have multiple surgeries last summer. And so I was here, and I didn't have to deal about leaving the Angels and anything like that for an extended period of time. So God works in mysterious ways. I always just believe in His plan, and usually if there's a calling, it's because it's part of a bigger thing than me. And so I'm glad that presented itself, and it's been fun.
Yeah. So also with the Rough Riders, you have your own company, Big Fly Gear. Could you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, we started that about 4 years ago now. It's been great. We sold a majority interest to an investor last year, and so we're still a part of it, but not as much as we were originally. But the idea was, as a broadcaster, you're a storyteller, right? And we were a startup, and it was just a way really to teach my kids kind of the entrepreneurial spirit, starting from nothing and coming up with an idea, and like, what are you going to do? How are you going to market it? How are you going to sell it? And that's kind of the premise behind it. And so when I knew I wanted to do something with Big Fly, I just didn't know what it was. And I came up with this idea. I didn't want to spend money on a license for Major League Baseball players or Major League Baseball to use their logos or likenesses. So I said, well, why don't we create original art that tells the story of a special event, a person, place, and or moment in baseball history revolving around the home run. And that's kind of the idea. We, unique designs that kind of help share the story of baseball, and it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah. So you played baseball for a long time. So what was your favorite moment playing baseball, whether it be high, like when you were in the minors, or like when you were younger? What was your favorite ever moment?
Yeah, I would say, when you sign your first contract as a professional, it's pretty cool, right? Like you can't believe it. And for me, it was with the Angels. So it's like I'm putting on an Angels uniform. I'm in Mesa, Arizona. It's like this is surreal. I think as a player, there were a couple of moments that stand out to me, where I felt really, really like in the moment, and that was it was summer ball of my junior year. I was 16 years old, and it was a state championship, American Legion ball in Kansas. And I hit 2 home runs. The first home run tied the score. The second home run put us ahead. We ended up winning state. And then the other moment was in college when I was at Lewis Clark State, and we were playing Washington State. And at the time, you guys are probably too young, but at the time, Washington State had Scott Hatterberg, who ended up being a big league catcher, was their catcher, and Aaron Seeley was a pretty dang good pitcher. He was one of their pitchers, and I remember there was 2 at bats in that game. One I doubled off the wall off of Seeley early in the game, and then in the 9th inning we were down by 4 runs, and I came up with the bases loaded, and I must have had probably like one of those 10 pitch at bats where I fouled off a lot of pitches with 2 strikes, and I ended up hitting a grand slam to tie the game against Washington State. And we ended up winning in extra innings, but I think that was just because of the moment. It was freaking 15 degrees out. It was northern Idaho. It was so cold. Swinging a aluminum bat, and it was a night game to boot. I just swung as hard as possible, and it probably, to me, I still think it's one of the furthest balls I've ever hit in my life.
Oh, yeah, it seems like a great moment.
Yeah, for sure.
So you've got a lot of moments, but did you always want to play at our age?
Yeah, I did. I mean, my dad played 16 years in the big leagues, and so he retired when I was in 5th grade from playing, but then he got into coaching. So, and I grew up with 3 brothers, so that's all we did. And I was the third of the 4 boys. That's all we did, man. We played a lot of wiffle ball in the backyard. We had, before we put a pool in, we had this. Our house was 2 stories. It's kind of a flat back, and we had a cable wire that ran along the top. And so what we did was we'd play against the wall, and if you hit it over the cable line, that was the home run. And spent a lot of time at the ballpark in Kansas City, take shag and BP and all that stuff. Yeah, I always wanted to play the game. It's different today. Like I so like my son, who's now a senior, he started as a tennis player. So he played freshman tennis. He was a varsity tennis player, and then before sophomore year, he decided he wanted to play baseball, go back to baseball. Like I had no idea, like perfect game. Like I'd heard of perfect game, but because I had a daughter, I had two daughters, and then my son. I was never into what you guys are dealing with on an everyday basis nowadays, right? Like this whole year-round baseball thing. Like I was clueless, and so he ended up doing that last summer. Was his first summer playing the perfect game stuff and traveling, and it was eye opening, and it's amazing how you guys can do that stuff year round with the tournament schedule in the summertime. I don't know what it's like in California. We're in the Midwest, so we're in Texas, so we kind of go towards. We play in Hoover, Alabama, and Atlanta, and then go down to Boomba in Florida by Sarasota, and Fort Myers. It's insane. I think you guys have what like PBR and Baseball Factory and stuff like that out there. But I can't. It was mind was blown when I was like, what? We got to go do what now? But it's been a lot of fun. It's been fun to watch because I love watching your guys' age right now. I can sit and watch a game. It doesn't matter if my kid's playing or not. I just, as long as it's good baseball, like it's higher level baseball, it could be 12U, 16U, it doesn't matter. I can sit there and watch it just because it's so good now. Like you guys are so good at this age. Like I was never that good. Like it took me, like I didn't get high school, college is when I finally started to get that good. Nowadays, you guys are starting like at 6, and it's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely relate to another thing, like when you said about like the wire over the wire was a home run. I can relate to like when I was younger, I used to like everywhere I go had to be a wiffle ball field, try to make something to play with. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I can totally relate. You played with a lot of amazing players. Who was your favorite player that you played with?
Mostly in the minor leagues. I didn't have a whole lot of time. I did spend some time in '93 as part of the coaching staff with the Marlins, and in their inaugural season. And I was fortunate enough to be around some pretty good players. The team wasn't very good because it was first year team, um, but our ball club. I mean, Brian Harvey, which obviously one of the saves leaders in Angels history, just a great dude. He was on that team. Um, Rob Nen eventually was on that team. Trevor Hoffman was a part of that Marlins team as well. Gary Sheffield was part of that team. So it's like, it was pretty cool in '93 to see all of those faces come in there and get a chance. Dave Magadan was a great hitter, longtime hitting coach in the big leagues now. So it was pretty cool. Mags was my roommate in spring training. And then on the road, Mitch Light, when he got called up, he was my roommate catcher. And one of the best things that ever happened to him was his first at bat in the big leagues. He hit a home run at Wrigley Field. So it was cool to be kind of a part of that.
Yeah, so back to you being a broadcaster. What do you do to prepare for going on air for the game?
Well, I haven't had to prepare for 2 years, so that's good. But mostly, my days were pretty much in the mornings, just kind of reading up on everything, right? Like all the news that's going on, whether it's with the Angels or just Major League Baseball in general. And then usually got to the yard about 3:30 or so. Got to start doing my score book. Go down about 4 to the dugout when the manager does his pregame speech and stuff. 4:30, go upstairs to eat, and then we just kind of hung out, just kind of get in the flow of the game. We're getting ready for the game with all the information as possible. Talk a lot to the broadcasters that are there from the other team to kind of get all the insight from their club and stuff like that. But yeah, it's usually a lot of reading, a lot of writing, and then the game's the easiest part because the game every night you kind of peel back the curtain and it's like, all right, whatever happens happens. It could be a 2-hour game that's 1-0, or it could be a 4-hour 13-11 game, right, with a walk off. So but that's the beauty of baseball. You just never know.
Yeah, so this is my final question. What advice would you give to kids like us who want dreams to make the MLB one day?
As a player or as a broadcaster? I mean, I'd tell you the exact same thing, to be perfectly honest with you. Just bust your tail. I mean, if you have a passion for something, if you love it, it's in your heart, and that's exactly what you want to do, then pursue it with all your might. The worst thing I think people do nowadays is They do something because they feel like they have to. It's a job. But whether it's sports or in the business world, I think you have to make decisions that are best suited for you and what you want to do and that make you happy. That you're excited to every day wake up and go do. And when you're having fun, it's not really a job. When you love what you do, it's not a job. It becomes more of a passion. So I say pursue anything and everything that you can. Learn as much as possible. Remain agile because you never know what's going to happen. And try to learn as much as possible when you can.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, with that, I think that's all the questions we really have. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have you on here.